Because of the choices that I've made as we've moved forward from that wedding day, I have created brand new habits, and it took a while. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't overnight, but I've created new habits of both thought and action that have brought us to a completely different blended family experience for 24 years than what I ever experienced as a kid. I didn't have to be defined by what I experienced in the past. Welcome to the Blended Family Breakthrough Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike and Kim.
We believe in a world where blended families can experience a future full of hope, connection, and peace.
That's why we offer tools, strategies, and guidance that move you from a place of confusion and conflict to experiencing a life of confidence and connection.
We're so glad you're joining us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations as we cover everything from romance to parenting, and yes, even dealing with that difficult ex.
So if you're ready to experience breakthrough in your blended family, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hey there, welcome, and thanks for joining us today. We're super excited for today's episode because it's something that we've both struggled with over the years individually. And one thing we've realized is that making real progress is so much better when you're surrounded by a supportive community. And if you haven't heard about our Blending Together community yet, we would love for you to check it out. For less than the cost of a cup of coffee each day, you can connect, although that's not saying much lately.
I know. Yeah. That's why I'm laughing.
But seriously, you can connect with other couples on the same journey as you. You'll connect directly with us and have a ton of blended family resources at your fingertips. Just head over to blendedfamilybreakthrough.com/blending together to check it all out. We would love to have you join us.
Absolutely.
All right, hon, let's get started. What are we tackling today?
Today, we're diving into something that impacts so many of us, especially in blended family life. And that's moving beyond self-doubt and learning to trust ourselves. For many of us, the journey leading up to this moment, this point in time, has been shaped by hard experiences. Times when we've made some mistakes, we've used poor judgment, or felt like we failed in some way. I know personally how easy it is to look back on those moments in the past and think, can I really trust myself? I don't exactly have the best track record. I've been there.
Yeah. And when life hasn't gone the way that we hoped, it's pretty natural to look back and wonder what went wrong. That kind of reflection can easily lead to self-doubt. We start asking ourselves questions like, why didn't I see the red flags? What was I thinking heading down that road? And when trust in ourselves has led to pain or regret in the past, we start believing that it's safer not to trust ourselves at all.
You might be nodding right now thinking, yep, that's totally me. Or maybe you're just not sure if you're living under a cloud of self-doubt. If you're unsure, here are a few questions you might ask yourself. Do I struggle to make decisions? And then second guess myself once I finally do. That's a tough one for me.
Yeah. Or do I constantly seek advice from others and then I just defer to what they think instead of trusting my own perspective?
Do I spend a lot of time reliving my past mistakes and feeling stuck in them?
Do I let those past failures define how much I trust myself today?
Am I my own worst critic?
Well, a lot of us can say yes to that, right?
Yes.
But if you answered yes to 2, 3, or however many of those, I just want you to know you're not alone.
No.
Hopefully those questions kind of help to shine a light on whether self-doubt is affecting how you show up in your life and in your relationships today.
I know I would have answered a big resounding yes to every single one of those questions not that long ago. But here's the good news. You can overcome self-doubt and rebuild trust in yourself. And that's exactly what we want to help you start doing today.
Absolutely. Sometimes this whole self-doubt thing comes in. You know, honey, you've been talking a little bit about the choices that we've made in the past and then how we're like, man, can I really trust myself? Sometimes it's not even just about my own choices, but it might be about what we've experienced in the past. So here's a self-doubt story for me.
Okay.
I remember, you know, sometime after our wedding, we were looking at our wedding pictures and we're looking through them. And I remember being kind of surprised by this question. You're like, were you even happy on our wedding day?
You weren't smiling in any pictures.
And I get that. Because there were a lot of pictures and I started looking at it and I'm like, wow, I really had quite a serious, look on my face. And I think what I realized over the years is because of the highly dysfunctional blended family that I grew up in, it created quite a bit of fear in me around what was going to happen to us in the coming years. And guess what that started translating to? Probably right in that moment. I mean, I can't remember. I was excited on our wedding day. Don't get me wrong. But probably in that moment, there was a little bit of self-doubt of, man, what am I doing here? Am I really going to be able to do something different than what I experienced as a child?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's around those choices that you've personally made that have just gone awry. Other times it might be those experiences that you had that might not have been your choice, and yet it impacts self-doubt. Maybe you've struggled with this kind of thing too, maybe for a while or recently, and you've kind of started to believe that it's just who you are. Right? That story that I just told was a little bit about my identity because it was part of my past. It was part of my family identity. You might think things like, I'm just not confident like other people, or this has got to be genetic. Like, is this the same thing my dad did or something like that? Or even something must be wrong with me. Right? And I think there's lots of people that struggle with this kind of thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Nick Wignall is a psychologist, writer, teacher, and podcaster. Listen to what he has to say about this. He says, of course, different temperaments and personality styles can influence your tendency to not trust yourself. And the same goes for your genetic makeup and early childhood experience. But all of these factors have a relatively modest influence on your ability to trust yourself compared to the major cause of self-trust issues, your habits.
Ooh.
That's what we want to explore today. We want to develop new habits that can help us cultivate more self-trust.
I love that. Nick goes on to say, what you do on a regular basis has a far bigger influence on your ability to trust yourself than anything in your DNA or your past. This is such a powerful truth, and here's why. If the problem is rooted in our habits, then that means it's not permanent. It's something we can actually change. And if you can start to recognize the habits that are fueling your self-doubt, you can begin to shift them and grow in confidence and self-trust over time. That was so true for me over the years. You know, because of the choices that I've made as we've moved forward from that wedding day, I have created brand new habits, and it took a while. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't overnight, but I've created new habits of both thought and action that have brought us to a completely different blended family experience for 24 years than what I ever experienced as a kid. I didn't have to be defined by what I experienced in the past.
Yeah. And now other couples trust you in guiding them in their blended journey.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Yeah. Thanks, listeners.
So let's dive into 5 helpful habits that can help all of us learn to trust ourselves and overcome self-doubt. What's the first one, honey?
All right, let's hop into healthy habit number 1, which is to replace self-criticism with self-compassion.
Love that.
It's pretty tough to build trust in yourself when your inner voice is constantly tearing you down. Even if you inherently know that you're capable and trustworthy, that quiet little voice saying, you're not enough, can actually chip away at your confidence, making it really hard to truly feel like you can rely on yourself. So if you want to grow in self-trust, you've got to break the cycle of negative self-talk and self-criticism. And one of the most powerful ways to do that, replace that self-criticism with self-compassion.
Yes, this is an area where I've had to really focus on because I can beat myself up on a regular basis.
For sure.
I've learned to be gentle with myself. And what self-compassion really means is offering yourself the same kindness and the same encouragement you'd give to a close friend who's struggling. If they're struggling with doubt, insecurity, or even fear. I mean, think about it. If your friend was having a tough time with their stepchild, feeling rejected or insecure, you wouldn't say anything to tear them down or chip away at their confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. As a caring friend, you're not going to say, your stepkid's never going to accept you, right? You're not going to just beat them down, or you're always going to be unwanted or unappreciated. A caring friend doesn't respond that way.
But that's how we talk to ourselves sometimes, you know? Of course, we're not going to say that to a friend. You'd probably say something along the lines of, you know, I can see your heart. Your motives are good, and I really believe that in time, your stepchild will see how amazing and wonderful you are.
Exactly. So, if you'd say kind and encouraging things to a friend, why not speak that way to yourself?
Exactly.
You can actually become your own best friend when you choose to replace self-criticism with self-compassion.
And here's the beautiful thing. When you start showing yourself grace instead of judgment, it becomes so much easier to believe in yourself and trust yourself.
Yeah. You know, a book that's been super incredible for me in this area it's called Soundtracks by Jon Acuff. And it helped me to really examine my self-talk, those quote unquote soundtracks that are running through my mind, hence the title of the book. And he really Jon Acuff taught me how to spot the negative ones and replace them with thoughts that are true, helpful, and kind. That's something that Acuff challenges us to do. And when we don't take control of our thoughts, they start to control us. But when we learn how to choose better soundtracks, our thoughts can actually become our biggest ally, really fueling self-trust and self-acceptance. So Jon Acuff puts it this way. One of the greatest mistakes that you can make in life is assuming all your thoughts are true.
I love that. If you've realized that you've been entertaining self-critical or negative thoughts, in the book, Acuff shares one strategy you can use to begin changing that habit today. Simply catch the thought and ask yourself 3 questions. Is it true? Is it helpful? And is it kind? Then choose to be your own best friend and start replacing those critical thoughts with compassionate ones.
Yeah, such a great, simple set of questions. I love it. You know, if this resonates with you at all, I highly recommend Soundtracks by Jon Acuff. It's one of the best books I've read in the last decade. And we'll drop a link in the show notes so that you can check that out as well. We'll also put an article from Nick Wignall called The Beginner's Guide to Self-Compassion that explores some common resistance to self-compassion and the amazing benefits to tackling that. So you can find the link in the show notes. And guess what? We're going to move on to the next helpful habit.
Helpful habit number 2, conquer fear, guilt, and worry. If you're constantly caught up in fear, guilt, or worry, especially about worst-case scenarios, well, it's no surprise that trusting yourself becomes harder.
Right.
When your mind is filled with fear about the future, guilt from the past, or worry about impending doom, it's only natural that your self-confidence starts to shrink. Let's look at a few examples. If you're always worried that people are judging you, it becomes much harder to trust yourself to be authentic. If you're fearful about your partner's former spouse and constantly bracing for the worst, it's tough to feel confident or trust your abilities to manage yourself in uncomfortable situations. If you feel guilty or responsible for the discomfort someone else is experiencing, you'll struggle to hold healthy boundaries and fail to trust and honor yourself.
I had to learn that last one the hard way.
We all have, right?
Yeah. Chronic worry, festering guilt, ongoing fear, those things just won't lead to self-confidence and trust.
Wow.
That's why learning to conquer these things is often the first step toward rebuilding trust in yourself. We're going to put a few links in the show notes to previous episodes that offer additional strategies for breaking free from fear and guilt as well.
Mm-hmm. Here's one simple but powerful habit that you can start today. Write down your anxious thoughts. Getting them onto paper can help in a few important ways. First, it slows down the racing pace of your thoughts because you can't write as fast as you think, so you have to slow down. This can curb catastrophizing and help to ease anxiety.
That's right. One of my favorite quotes is thoughts disentangle themselves through the lips and fingertips, right? So all those jumbled up thoughts in our brains, when we can verbally process them or journal them out, they actually start getting untangled.
Yeah, you gain some clarity.
Absolutely. And so writing and journaling, it kind of gives you a fresh perspective. And when your fear, guilt, and worries are right there in front of you, it's easier to spot which ones are valid concerns and which are just what ifs or irrational thoughts as you really write them all out.
Mm-hmm. Putting it on paper is a small step with big impact. It's a way to quiet the noise and start hearing your own voice again. The voice that says, I can do this. I don't have to allow fear, guilt, or worry to dictate my thoughts or my life.
Absolutely. Another helpful aspect of keeping a journal of your anxious thoughts is that you can actually look back on past entries and discover that many, if not all, of those things that you worried about or feared might not actually have transpired, or probably not, at least to the degree that you were bracing yourself for.
Right.
And that starts to help you to consider how you really want to spend your time and energy moving forward. Like, where are you going to put your focus?
Exactly. The reality is, if you haven't learned to conquer fear, guilt, and worry, it'll keep your mind trapped in things that you probably don't need to worry about. And it ends up depleting you of time and mental energy that could be used for other more positive, joyful, important things in your life.
Right.
So we want to replace self-criticism with self-compassion and conquer fear, guilt, and worry. What's the next healthy habit, honey?
All right. Let's keep moving into healthy habit number 3. Embrace a growth mindset.
Woohoo!
All right. Now, trusting yourself can be tough, especially if you're holding on to regrets from past mistakes. It's really easy to fall into this trap of thinking that just because we've stumbled before, now we're doomed to just keep getting things wrong. But when we stay stuck in those unproductive thought patterns, we tend to sabotage our ability to grow and move forward, and then we continually doubt ourselves.
Right. The truth is, we're all a work in progress. As human beings, we're constantly learning, growing, and becoming better versions of ourselves. That's a lifelong journey. But if you believe you'll always be the same person who made those poor choices in the past, you're rejecting the very real possibility that you can change, evolve, and grow from your experiences and ultimately trust yourself.
Absolutely. I love how teacher and author Dale Carnegie put it. The successful man will profit from his mistakes and try again in a different way. Man, that is the growth mindset in a nutshell right there, right? It's not just recognizing that we can make better choices. It's pursuing growth by actually learning from those past mistakes.
Exactly. You know, I've shared openly on the show about the mistakes that I've made, whether it was in parenting my daughter or dealing with my ex. I've made choices that I deeply regret. And if I could go back with what I know now, I'd handle so many situations differently. But here's the thing. I can't go back and change the past, right? None of us can do that. And if I'd stayed stuck in that place of self-blame and thinking, well, that's just who I am, I would have missed the opportunity to turn those stumbling blocks into stepping stones. By embracing a growth mindset, I've been able to use my past as a launching pad for a healthier future. And so can you.
Definitely. Oscar Wilde once said, experience is simply the name we give our mistakes. If we can reframe our mistakes as experiences, they become something that we can learn from rather than something we're ashamed of. Our past doesn't have to define us. It's what we do with those experiences that shapes who we become. You know, that fear that I had when we were walking down the aisle together, a lot of that was rooted in my family of origin, like I said. And one of the results of all of that is that early on in our marriage, I had a real anger problem, right? So much so that there was one point in time, I've shared this on the show before, I think, that, honey, you were locked in the upstairs bathroom because you were afraid of me because I was in an angry tirade. Now, I thank the Lord that I've never laid a hand on anybody in our family, but boy, I probably came pretty close along the way a few times. Now, why am I telling that story? It could be easy for me to just stay stuck in a fixed mindset that is really shame-based around those mistakes that I made. That was poor behavior. And instead, though, I actually started to turn it around. I got help. I figured that, hey, I actually can do something different. And I began a healing journey that radically changed not just my angry tirades, but really what I experienced internally day in and day out. And part of the process for me in that is having to reframe that mistake as, wait, this is an experience, and now I need to learn to do something different. And, you know, I definitely regret some of those things that I did in the past, and I wish I had never done them, but I can't say that I'm ashamed anymore. When I stayed stuck before I got help, I was ashamed. Because I was telling myself that's who I am, as opposed to really examining who I am at the core and then doing something different, because it's the habits that make all the difference and change things, right?
You chose to focus on who you could become.
Exactly.
If you put in the work.
Exactly. So if you're listening to any of that and it resonates with you at all, I want you to really embrace the habit of maintaining a growth mindset. Keep your mind focused on some new beliefs about yourself. You are not your past, just like I am not my past. You're capable of change. You can learn, grow, and make better decisions. I want you to really hear that and embrace it.
Absolutely. And you can trust yourself again because you're not standing still. You're continually moving forward. To discover a few more strategies for this habit of embracing a growth mindset, you might want to go check out episode 165 titled, How Important is Your Mindset When It Comes to Blended Family Life?
I'll give you a hint. It's really important.
And you can click the link in the show notes to check that out.
That's right. All right. So we've got 3 new habits that we can cultivate right away: replacing self-criticism with self-compassion, conquering fear, guilt, and worry, and embracing a growth mindset. These habits are going to help build deeper levels of self-confidence and trust in ourselves. So we've got a couple more. What do you say we keep going, hon?
Okay. Healthy habit number 4, speak up with confidence. One big reason that people struggle to trust themselves is because they hold back or shut down. They're afraid to speak up, share their thoughts, or express what they really want and need, especially when it feels a bit uncomfortable. Here are a few common examples. You have a great idea for family time, but you keep it to yourself because you're worried that others will think it's dumb.
Yeah. Or you'd love to spark more connection and romance in your marriage, but never really ask for something different because you don't want to hurt your partner's feelings.
You need to talk to your ex about their chronic lateness, but you always back out because it feels awkward.
Yeah. Here's the real issue. When you constantly silence your own thoughts and needs to protect other people's feelings, you're teaching your brain that your needs don't matter, that your voice doesn't matter. Over time, that starts to erode confidence. It chips away at your self-trust. And when your brain starts to believe that what you have to say or what you need isn't important, how could you possibly feel empowered or confident in who you are and what you have to offer?
You know, speaking up with confidence is all about learning the skill of assertive communication. Assertive communication isn't aggressive. It isn't passive or passive aggressive. Assertiveness is the foundation of self-confidence. Nick Wignall states this: there is incredible value to using the assertive style of communication. First, it decreases social anxiety and the need for approval. Next, it helps you become more relaxed and less stressed.
Third, it increases self-confidence and self-respect. Fourth, you become less resentful of others.
And fifth, it improves relationships and partnerships. And isn't all of this great stuff, right?
For
We
sure.
all want more of this, but we know that cultivating the habit of speaking up in an assertive way isn't always easy. Often this comes with some challenges, especially if you tend to doubt or minimize yourself. We share about all of this in episode 50, how to openly communicate what you really want, which is also in the show notes.
Of course. And to get started today, here's a really simple strategy for assertively asking for what you want with confidence. First, state what you'd like, and then a simple explanation of why. It might sound like this: I'd love to go on a hike together as a family because it might create an opportunity for connection. See, simple. Not always easy, but simple. Or you might say, I'd love to schedule more date nights with you because I miss the romance that we used to enjoy together, right? Or maybe to an ex, hey, I'd really love to talk about how we can build more consistency around transition time because I noticed that the kids get anxious when that typical transition time passes. Here's the bottom line. If you want to build deeper trust in yourself, you have to cultivate the habit of speaking up clearly, kindly, and honestly. Reclaim your voice because it matters. You don't have to be loud or aggressive. Just be real, be direct, and be you.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're focusing on replacing self-criticism with self-compassion, conquering our fear, guilt, and worry, embracing a growth mindset, and speaking up with confidence. What's the fifth healthy habit, honey?
Awesome. Yes. Healthy habit number 5. Let go of perfectionism by adjusting your expectations. One of the fastest ways to chip away at your self-worth and ability to trust yourself is setting sky-high expectations you or your family could never realistically meet. I'm speaking of this with confidence because I'm so good at it. Right? Expecting a family outing that you've planned to be a bonding breakthrough for everyone, that's probably an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thinking you're a bad parent unless your child is always happy and content and well-behaved, even though you can't control their emotions?
Probably
That's
unrealistic.
Very unrealistic.
Believing that you've failed as a partner if you just lose your temper even once. Whew, man, if I believed that, I'd be out of here. Right? You would have kicked me to the curb a long time ago. You see the pattern there? It's really hard to build self-trust when your standards are rooted in perfectionism.
Right. Sometimes our need for perfection is driven by our emotions. We might become emotionally attached to this idea of experiencing a perfect family outing where everyone is in a good mood and we're really bonding, just like a first family. But when we become overly invested emotionally in making that perfect day happen, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment and pain when things don't go exactly as we'd planned, when our perfect expectations don't match up with reality. This, in turn, will cause you to doubt, blame, and distrust yourself. Perfectionism driven by unrealistic expectation leads to chronic stress and persistent dissatisfaction.
That's right. In his article called What Causes Perfectionism and How to Get Over It, Nick Wignall draws this conclusion. Perfectionism isn't about being perfect, it's about feeling perfect. He goes on to say that the secret to overcoming perfectionism is to practice being tolerant of our emotions. If that's something that could be helpful to you and kind of letting go of perfectionism and adjusting your expectations, then be sure to check out Nick's article as well as a few past episodes that'll help you get started. And again, we'll put links in the show notes for you.
In the meantime, here's a new habit you can start today to shift out of perfectionism by simply becoming more intentional about the expectations you place on yourself. Pick an area of your life where you tend to be hard on yourself. Maybe it's work, parenting, health, or relationships.
Then track your expectations. Just keep a little notepad nearby or use the Notes app on your phone and jot down any self-demands or inner pressures that tend to pop up over the next week.
Highlight the unrealistic ones. Look through your notes and focus on any that seem extreme, inflexible, or simply out of your control.
Yep. And then reframe them. Rewrite those expectations to make them more balanced and attainable. So instead of, our family outing will be just the reset that we need to get everyone to chill out and enjoy spending time together. Reframe that with something like, our family outing is going to be a great opportunity to allow everyone to engage at their own pace, and I'm going to be open and flexible regardless of what happens, right? Or maybe our family outing is all about imperfect progress, and I can stay focused on the small wins that we might experience as a family. You see how different those are?
Yeah. So practice catching your thoughts and expectations when perfectionism shows up. Pause and reframe it with your new, more realistic version.
That's great. Here's the bottom line. You can update your expectations. With just a little bit of practice, they can become more realistic, more compassionate, and more empowering. And when that happens, then trusting yourself and believing in yourself becomes a whole lot easier.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. We've covered a lot today. We never want to overwhelm you. So we encourage you to pick just one of these 5 habits to focus on. The one that you relate to the most or feels doable for you at this point in time. Maybe you'll check out the links in the show notes and do a deeper dive or start with something we shared today. But don't continue to live in self-doubt. Take a next step now to cultivate more self-confidence and self-trust. You can do this.
That's right. All right, let's just review them once more, and you can choose the one you want to focus on. Healthy habit 1. Replace self-criticism with self-compassion. Choose to be your own best friend.
Number 2, conquer fear, guilt, and worry. Examine and confront your anxious thoughts instead of getting trapped in them.
Number 3, embrace a growth mindset. Reframe those past mistakes as experiences and recognize that you can learn from those.
Number 4, speak up with confidence. Choose to communicate your thoughts and needs in an assertive way.
And finally, number 5, let go of perfectionism by adjusting your expectations. Embrace realistic expectations and imperfect progress.
Next week, make sure you catch our Simple Step bonus episode where we'll share one more aspect of trust, and that's learning to trust each other. And you'll need to be following the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts so you don't miss that.
That's right. And if you want to connect with a supportive community that will help you to take steps forward in all of these habits that we've just discussed today, check out blendedfamilybreakthrough.com/blending together and see if joining our Blending Together community would be the right next step for you. Hey, thanks so much again for joining us today. We're going to make this episode a wrap.
Until next time.